Imagine standing before a mirror, tracing the line of your jaw, the curve of your lip, and seeing the face of a ghost civilization staring back. Not a metaphor, a literal genetic inheritance. You carry the blueprint of a people who built cities with plumbing 5,000 years ago, whose script no one has ever deciphered, and whose very existence was nearly erased from history. But they are not gone. If you are Tamil, their DNA is not a trace. It is a roar. And by the end of this, you will understand that the question of where Tamils come from has been hiding an answer far more astonishing than anyone ever guessed. A single, unbroken thread of human lineage, one of the deepest on the planet outside of Africa, sits inside you right now, waiting to be read. We are drilling down into a single, razor-sharp mystery. It is not a broad history of a people. It is a genetic detective story. The question is this: what is the true, deep ancestry of the Tamil people? And how does it connect them to a civilization that vanished thousands of years ago? The answer will dismantle everything you thought you knew about ancient India. But there is a catch. A single, haunting piece of the puzzle that will only slot into place at the very end. It is a detail that rewrites the fate of an entire lost world, and it is hiding in plain sight, inside a specific set of genes. The story of the Tamils is not just a story of the past. It is a map of the deepest branches of the human family tree. And the final revelation on that map is something no textbook has ever told you. For centuries, the origins of the Tamils have been painted in the broad strokes of myth and simple, satisfying stories. The first and most persistent story is one of pure, unbroken isolation. The idea that the Dravidian-speaking peoples are the original, singular inhabitants of India, pushed south by later Aryan invaders. A southern fortress of primordial identity. The reality is messier. Pure isolation is a genetic fantasy. No population on Earth is a time capsule untouched by mixing. The very concept of a pure ancestral group collapses under the weight of modern genomics. A second story leans on the towering presence of Tamil literature itself, the Sangam poems that are over 2,000 years old. The logic goes, the language is ancient, therefore the people are a static, ancient block. But language is not a sealed vessel of blood. Languages can spread, be adopted, and thrive in populations with very different genetic histories. A third, more modern myth points to the Indus Valley civilization as a simple, direct ancestor. The story goes, the Harappans fell, they moved south, and they became the Tamils. A neat historical migration. But this is a story told without looking at the DNA from the skeletons. And the DNA tells a tale that is both older and far more complex, a story of not one founding population, but three distinct ancestral threads weaving together over millennia. The story is not a simple pilgrimage south. It is a collision of worlds. The real investigation begins not in a dusty library, but in the sterile, humming laboratories of the world's leading geneticists. The study that shattered the old theories is a landmark body of work, published in the journal Science in 2019, spearheaded by researchers like Vageesh Narasimhan, David Reich, and Priya Morjani. This was not a small survey. The team analyzed genome-wide data from over 600 ancient individuals, scattered across South and Central Asia, and compared them to the DNA of thousands of modern people. The scale of the project was a direct assault on the problem. They had the bones of the past. They had the blood of the present. The method sounds like a computer game, but it is brutally precise. They didn't look at a single lineage. They mathematically modeled ancient populations as mixtures of ghost ancestries, calculating the proportions of different source groups that had blended together to form the people we see today. This problem stayed unsolved for so long because the key ancestral groups were ghosts. The ancient ancestral South Indians, or Asi, left no known skeletons for the study to directly sample. They were a genetic phantom, inferred only by the echo they left in their descendants. The researchers themselves described the process as piecing together a shattered mosaic while blindfolded. You could feel the historical tension in the data. Every modern genome was a whisper from a forgotten world, and the team had to build the people who did the whispering from the sound alone. And here is where it gets strange. The first major revelation they uncovered was not about the Indus Valley at all. It was about a lineage so old, it makes the pyramids look like yesterday's news. The first chapter reveal begins with the oldest ghost, the Asi, the ancient ancestral South Indians. We are not talking about a tribe that branched off 10,000 years ago. We are talking about one of the deepest, most foundational splits in the human journey outside of the African continent. Imagine the great human migration out of Africa. A single stream of people who would become the ancestors of everyone from a French farmer to a Native American. Near the very base of that branching tree, almost as soon as modern humans moved into the broader world, one lineage split off and headed into the deep interior of South Asia. That was the Asi. Their lineage is so ancient, so divergent, that it sits closer to the root of all non-African ancestry than almost any other living population's DNA. This is not a minor regional fact. This is a cornerstone of our species' global history. The surprising side fact is that while this lineage was once ubiquitous across the subcontinent, it is today preserved most strongly in the genomes of specific South Indian tribal groups, like the Irula and Paniya, and in a significant fraction within the DNA of all Tamils. Picture a micro-scene from 60,000 years ago, somewhere in the Western Ghats. The air is thick with monsoon dampness. A small band of hunter-gatherers, their skin dark as the night, their hair tightly curled, crouches in a rock shelter, napping microliths, tiny stone tools that glint in the firelight. They are not just surviving. They are being. They are the direct ancestors of a lineage that will endure, unbroken, through every subsequent wave of migration and change, into the genetic code of a modern software engineer in Chennai. The two-sided number is stark. In some of these tribal groups, over 80% of their ancestry is that deep Asi signal. In a modern Tamil individual, it can be around 30 to 40%. This is not a tiny trace. It is a third of their entire biological heritage. This ancient hunter-gatherer is not a distant cousin. It is a grandparent. But this is only the oldest layer, the bedrock. The next question is who came next, and what they brought with them. The ghost of the first farmer is stirring in the dust. The second chapter reveal comes with the first farmers, a wave of people who brought a revolution. This is the Zagros Neolithic-related ancestry. Originating from the rugged Zagros mountains of what is now Iran, these were among the world's earliest agriculturalists, the people who first domesticated goats and cultivated wheat. Over 9,000 years ago, they began a slow, seismic migration eastward, spreading their knowledge of farming into the fertile plains of the Indus Valley. They did not arrive in an empty land. They met the descendants of the Asi hunter-gatherers, and they mixed. The surprising side fact is that this mixing was not a singular event, but a long, complex process that created an entirely new ancestral population, the one geneticists call the Ancestral South Indian, or ASI. The ASI is the genetic fusion of the deep Asi lineage and the Iranian farmer lineage. It is the parent population of the Indus Valley civilization. Visualize a microscene in a prehistoric settlement at the edge of the Indus River floodplain. It is dawn. A man with ancestors from the Iranian highlands, his skin a warm brown, his hair dark and straight, stands beside a woman whose lineage has hunted in these forests for 40,000 years. He holds a basket of domesticated barley seeds. She holds a grinding stone. They are not just trading goods. They are exchanging a future. Their children will be the genetic blueprint for the urban revolution to come. The two-sided number here is a proportion. The ASI, the fusion that would build the Harappan cities, is roughly a 50-50 blend of the ancient Iranian farmer and the Asi hunter-gatherer. It is a living testament to the fact that major civilizations are born not from isolation, but from the collision and fusion of two very different peoples. This fusion is the genetic signature of the Indus Valley, and the Indus Valley is where the story gets explosive. But you must understand, the fusion we just described is the DNA of a ghost city. The next chapter of the proof will come not from a calculation, but from a single skeleton in a forgotten grave. The third chapter reveal is the smoking gun, the skeleton from Rocky Garhi. In 2015, a team of Indian and international archaeologists, excavating a Harappan-era cemetery at the site of Rocky Garhi in modern-day Haryana, found a skeleton. Labeled I-6113, it was the remains of a woman who lived and died in the Indus Valley civilization roughly 4,500 years ago. For years, attempts to extract ancient DNA from the hot, humid South Asian environment failed. The genetic code was degraded, fragmented. But in 2019, a team led by the archaeologist Vasant Shinde and the geneticist David Reich succeeded. They published their findings in the journal Cell, and the results were a bombshell. The surprising side fact was what the Rakhigarhi woman's DNA did not contain. It was a perfect genetic match for the ASI, the fusion of Asi and Iranian farmer, but it was completely, utterly missing a third component, the steppe pastoralist ancestry. The DNA of the Bronze Age nomads from the Eurasian steppe, who would later spread Indo-European languages, was at 0. Imagine the microscene in the lab. A postdoctoral researcher, staring at a computer screen, runs the ancestral decomposition algorithm for the 100th time. She rubs her eyes, checks the reference panels, and runs it again. The bar for the steppe ancestry is not a small sliver. It is flat. It is nothing. She calls over her supervisor. "There's no steppe," she says, her voice a mix of disbelief and dawning excitement. "The Harappans have no steppe DNA." The two-sided number is this. Steppe ancestry in the Rakhigarhi woman was 0%. In modern Tamils, it is present, but at a low level, around 2 to 5%. The implication is a tectonic shift. The steppe people did not build the Indus Valley civilization. They arrived after it collapsed. The DNA of the woman from Rakhigarhi is the genetic key that unlocks the true origin of the Tamils. It points to a civilization that was pre-Indo-European and whose genetic legacy would flow south. But the flow itself is the next pressure point. The ghost of the Harappans is about to walk south. The fourth chapter reveal is the Great Dispersal, the genetic trail of breadcrumbs that leads from the dying cities of the Indus to the southern tip of the Deccan. The Indus Valley civilization did not collapse overnight in a single, dramatic invasion. It was a slow, grinding deurbanization, driven by a centuries-long drought and the decline of trade networks. People did not disappear. They moved. And the genetic map of modern India is the proof of their journey. The surprising side fact is the gradient of ASI ancestry. It is a visible, sliding scale across the subcontinent. In the north, closer to the old Harappan heartland, populations have a higher proportion of the steppe pastoralist ancestry that arrived later. As you move south, the ASI signal, the fingerprint of the Indus Valley people, rises and rises until it reaches its peak in the Dravidian-speaking populations of Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka. This is not a random distribution. It is a physical map of a demographic pressure wave. Picture a microscene at the edge of a crumbling Harappan city, around 1800 BCE. The Great Bath is no longer filled with water, but with drifting sand. A family, a potter and his wife, their children, packs a cart. They are not thinking of migrating to found a new civilization. They are thinking of finding a place where the rivers still flow, where there is arable land, where they can live. They take with them their tools, their seeds, their language, and their genes. They join a slow, human river trickling east and south, generation after generation, along the river valleys of the Narmada and the Godavari. The two-sided number is the ASI peak. In some northern Indian populations, the ASI component can be as low as 20%. In a Tamil or other South Indian Dravidian-speaking group, it can be well over 50%. The DNA of the lost city did not just survive. It became the dominant strain in a new homeland. But this is where the story takes a sharp turn. The mystery of the steppe ancestry is not what you think. The final piece of the puzzle is a tiny, stubborn signal that refuses to go away. The fifth chapter reveal is the tiny, stubborn signal, the steppe pastoralist ancestry. If the Indus Valley people had 0 steppe DNA, and modern Tamils are their genetic descendants, then how did this northern Bronze Age nomadic ancestry get into the Tamil genome? The answer is a secondary wave of admixture. The steppe pastoralists associated with the Sintashta and Andronovo cultures of Central Asia swept into the northwestern subcontinent in the 2nd millennium BCE, after the Indus Valley had already declined. They were the vector for the spread of Indo-Aryan languages, the ancestor family of Sanskrit, Hindi, and Punjabi. The surprising side fact is that this steppe wave did not just stop at the Vindhyas. It was a male-dominated migration, and its genetic signal, while diluted by distance and time, still percolated through the entire subcontinent, including the far south. The steppe ancestry in a Tamil individual is not a myth. It is measurable. It is low, but it is real. Picture a microscene at a royal court in the Deccan, around 300 BCE. A horse trader from the northwest, his features carrying the high cheekbones and prominent nose of his steppe ancestors, presents a magnificent steed to a local Dravidian-speaking king. A trade deal is struck. A marriage alliance is formed. It is not a conquest. It is a single, human transaction. Multiplied by thousands of such interactions over centuries, the genetic traces of the steppe are woven, thread by thread, into the fabric of the South. The two-sided number is the contrast. In a northern Indian Brahmin population, steppe ancestry can be 15 to 20%. In a Tamil individual, it is typically around 2 to 5%. It is a whisper compared to a shout. This whisper is a critical piece of evidence. It proves a connection, not a replacement. The genetic story of the Tamils is a layered cake, not a pie chart. And it is the whisper that leads to the next vital question. If the steppe ancestry is the outsider, where does the language of the Tamils belong? The final chapter reveal is about the voice of the genes. The sixth chapter reveal is the most electrifying hypothesis in modern South Asian history, the connection between the Indus Valley civilization and the Dravidian languages. The genetic evidence has created a new, powerful argument. The Indus Valley people had no steppe DNA, the genetic marker of the Indo-European languages. Modern Dravidian speakers, the most prominent of whom are the Tamils, have the highest concentration of the Indus Valley's genetic signature. The logic is compelling. The language of the Indus Valley civilization, the tongue of the Harappan engineers and traders, was very likely a Proto-Dravidian language. The surprising side fact is that this is not just a genetic inference. A linguistic puzzle piece comes from a tiny, ancient colony. The Dravidian language of Brahui, spoken by a small population in the mountains of Balochistan, Pakistan, sits geographically isolated in the middle of Indo-European and Iranian language territory. It is a linguistic island, a survivor. It is a strong hint that Dravidian languages were once spoken across a vast swath of land, from the Indus to the south, before being fragmented by later linguistic waves. Imagine a microscene on a beach in the Gulf of Mannar, the early centuries of the Common Era. A Tamil trader from a Sangam-age port, his ship laden with pepper and textiles, writes a merchant's note on a potsherd. The script is Tamil Brahmi. The language is the oldest classical language in India. The words he writes are not the ancestral language of the steppe. They are the linguistic descendant of a language spoken in the grid-planned streets of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. The two-sided number is the genetic dominance. The fact that the ASI component, the IVC's genetic fingerprint, constitutes over 50% of Tamil ancestry, while the steppe component is under 5%, provides a genetic weight to the linguistic argument. The language matches the majority ancestry, not the minority one. The Tamils are not just the inheritors of a bloodline. They are the torchbearers of a lost linguistic world. This is the point where the entire picture snaps into sharp, undeniable focus. The evidence is about to converge on a single, clear truth. The evidence is no longer a set of distinct, wandering facts. It is a converging beam of light. The Asi, the deepest root. The Iranian farmer, the spark of agriculture. The Rakhigarhi woman, the ghost of the Indus. The gradient of ASI ancestry, the map of the Great Dispersal, the tiny whisper of steppe DNA, the proof of a later connection, and the linguistic inference, the voice of the forgotten cities. All of it points to one direction. The genetic story of the Tamils is not a story of a single pure origin. It is a story of three ancient human populations, colliding and fusing over millennia, to create a people who uniquely carry the torch of South Asia's first urban civilization. The evidence snaps into focus. The Indus Valley is not a dead end. It is a direct ancestor. And the final piece of the puzzle, the turn that changes everything, is not about the past. It is about the present. The core answer is this. The genetic origins of the Tamil people are a layered matrix of three foundational ancestral populations. The deepest layer is the ancient ancestral South Indian, Asi, hunter-gatherer, one of the most ancient non-African lineages on Earth. The next layer is the Neolithic Iranian farmer, who mixed with the Asi to create the ancestral South Indian, ASI, genetic profile. This ASI profile is the exact DNA of the Indus Valley civilization, as proven by the Rakhigarhi woman. The final thinnest layer is a Bronze Age steppe pastoralist component, which arrived after the IVC's decline. Tamils are the living population in whom the genetic signature of the lost Indus Valley civilization, the ASI component, is most strongly preserved today. They are not a peripheral branch of South Asian history. They are a central, unbroken line of descent from its first great civilization. But the story does not end there. The true twist, the revelation that reframes this entire narrative, is not about the past at all. It is about the meaning of continuity. The popular story of Tamil origins has always been one of ancient, static, and defensive isolation. A fortress culture pushed to the tip of a subcontinent. The genetic revolution reveals the precise opposite. The defining characteristic of Tamil DNA is not isolation. It is a profound and ancient history of absorption and synthesis. The Tamil genome is a palimpsest, a manuscript written over and over again. It is the record of a people who absorbed the oldest hunter-gatherers on the subcontinent, who then fully integrated an entire wave of pioneering farmers to create a new, hybrid civilization, and who, after that civilization collapsed, still had the demographic resilience to absorb a third wave of people from an entirely different world, the steppe pastoralists, without losing their own defining genetic and cultural core. The miracle is not the purity of a single origin. The miracle is the coherence of a tripartite one. The Tamils are not a people who were simply pushed south. They are a people who, through a process of continuous fusion, became the primary biological and cultural custodians of a lost world. The Indus Valley civilization didn't just vanish. It was subsumed, and its greatest concentration of descendants live on, not in isolation, but as a testament to the power of synthesis. The story of the Tamils is the story of what happens when a deep-rooted people repeatedly open their arms to the world, and, in the act of embracing, preserve the identity of the ones who came before. This is not a tale of a fragile lineage clinging to the rocks. It is a story of a demographic fusion reactor, and its strongest signal is still burning bright today. This conclusion is not just a story told by one method. It is a rare moment of independent confirmation from a completely different category of evidence. The ancient DNA from the skeleton at Rakhigarhi is a physical, chemical proof. The mathematical modeling of modern genomes is a statistical proof. But the third, independent confirmation comes from archaeology and anthropology. The material culture of the megalithic Iron Age in South India, which begins around 1200 BCE, shows a fascinating and direct link to the north. Archaeologists have found distinct burial practices, cairn circles and stone alignments, spreading from the Deccan Plateau into Tamil Nadu. These are not the remnants of a pure, isolated, indigenous culture. They are a clear techno-cultural transfer from the north, arriving in the centuries immediately following the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization. The objects in these graves, iron tools, black and red ware pottery, specific horse ornaments, are a physical echo of the same demographic movement the genetics revealed. You can trace the migration not in the bones, but in the stones and the pots. The genetic signal of the post-Harappan dispersal and the archaeological signal of the megalithic builders are two independent lines of evidence that converge on the exact same story. The people who brought the ASI ancestry to its southern peak were also the people who brought a new way of burying their dead and a new technology of iron. The DNA and the archaeology are telling the same story, in two different languages, and they validate each other perfectly. Let us dive into the mechanism, the specific genetic systems, with hard comparative numbers. The story of a population is written in its genes, a ledger of survival and death. The longevity of the Aussie lineage is not just a matter of chance. It is a map of adaptation. The Aussie had to survive in the specific disease environments of South Asia: malaria, cholera, typhoid. You can see the genetic scars of these battles in the high frequency of specific alleles in Tamil populations. For example, genes related to protection against malaria, like certain variants of the G6PD gene, show frequencies that are distinct from both European and East Asian populations, an ancient local adaptation. On the other side, the steppe pastoralists brought their own genetic legacy. The same steppe ancestry that is a minority in the south is associated in northern populations with a higher frequency of the lactose tolerance mutation, the ability to digest milk into adulthood. In a Tamil population, the frequency of this steppe-linked trait is dramatically lower, a direct reflection of the lower steppe ancestry fraction. The two sides are stark. A high frequency of ancient, Aussie-linked disease resistance genes defines one side of the Tamil genetic coin. A low frequency of a steppe-linked dietary adaptation defines the other. The genome is a biological record of a specific history of mixing and adaptation. It proves that the population's history is not just a story of identity, but a story of biological survival. We must be honest about the limits. The evidence does not prove that the Indus Valley language was definitively Dravidian. It is the strongest, most parsimonious hypothesis, but it is not a proven fact. An undeciphered script and a ghost language leave no smoking gun. The evidence also does not provide a precise, single percentage for the ancestry of all Tamils. Tamils are a diverse people, with a vast range of endogamous subgroups, and the exact proportions of the three ancestral components will vary from one community to the next. The science gives us a powerful, broad framework, not a personal genetic horoscope. The true power of this work is not in giving a single final answer to the question of origin. It is in replacing a series of simple, false myths with a more profound and complex truth. So what does this mean for you, looking at your own face in the mirror? If you are Tamil, you are looking at the face of a human fusion, the high cheekbones of a steppe nomad, the deep-set eyes of an Iranian farmer, the skin tone of the first human hunter to set foot on the subcontinent. The curve of your smile is a map. Your family, your blood, is not a simple, sacred line of isolation. It is a story of survival through synthesis. It is the story of the Aussie hunter, who watched the monsoon clouds gather for 50,000 years. It is the story of the Iranian farmer, who planted the first seed of a new way of life. It is the story of the Harappan engineer, who built a city of unthinkable complexity, and whose world collapsed. It is the story of the steppe pastoralist, who rode into a new land and was absorbed into an older, deeper current. And it is the story of you, the living heir to a civilization that was not destroyed, but was carried, in the blood of its people, to the southern tip of a continent. The DNA of the Tamils is the unbroken thread of the deepest human past. The surprising origin of Tamil ancestry is now, at last, coming into focus. And the answer was not a single origin, but a magnificent, enduring synthesis of three worlds: the deepest hunter-gatherer layer, the Iranian farmer stream, and the vanished Indus Valley civilization whose people did not disappear but were carried southward in living blood. What other ancient civilizations do you think might be hiding, not in ruins, but inside the living populations of today? Tell us in the comments.